Want entertainment designed just for you? Then check out customizable streaming TV from Xfinity. It makes your life simple, easy, awesome.
Xfinity gives you customizable streaming TV options. Enjoy the most free shows anywhere on any device, and even access your streaming apps right on your TV with X1. Go to Xfinity.com, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit a store today to learn more. Restrictions apply.
Today is a special episode of Aquarian Radio. This is a pre-recorded podcast version of the show. I am Karen Christine Patrick, your host today, and I interviewed Charlotte Rose Wan, part of the Linkage Institute and friend of AR Bordon from the Life Physics Group. This episode is a part of the We the Anunnaki series here on Aquarian Radio. Charlotte is an experiencer, poet, and has done media work in the area of ET contact and the Anunnaki. Blessed with gifts from her Irish and Cherokee heritage, she has also worked on developing what she calls the knowing. In dreams, visions, and through her art, she has made contact, going through the innernet, INNERNET, going within to the broad internal realm of thought, to delve into questions she's had through her multivaried life. She and her husband, PJ Wan, were close friends with AR Bordon, the mysterious insider, who shared information from his research about the Anunnaki and other ET races and about life physics, a theoretical physics model arising from projects where anonymous physicists partnered with intuitive psychics to map out idiomaterial physics, or the concept that everything we see starts with an idea or thought and then becomes material. Charlotte comes to us today to share her story and philosophical perspective on the eventuality of our meeting our galactic family, hopefully in the near future.
Okay, thank you for coming on the show, Charlotte. This is a little bit different format. We're calling this the podcast version of Aquarian Radio, trying something different. So thank you for coming on with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I was saying us, but it's actually me. Janet's getting ready to speak at the Starworks conference in Laughlin, Nevada. It's being put on by Paula Harris, and she's I don't know when she's speaking, but I'd love to be there. Nevada's not that far away from me. I'd love to go, maybe next year. So it's just you and me, and it's awesome because we know each other. We need to let the people know that we've probably been friends for a couple millennia somehow, and we met up in this lifetime a couple of years ago and worked on different radio projects and other projects together. And I've gotten to know you, and it's like family. I mean, I know that some people know when they meet people with these kinds of experiences that we're having. It's a really neat feeling to me. You're not the only one, and it's nice to get to know you, and we have so much in common. I really enjoy that. So I'll just say quickly that we met through the AR Bordon Circle of Friends. We kind of ostensibly call that the Linkage Institute here on Aquarian Radio, and it's really a concept. We're going to see how it develops because we had the contact with AR Bordon. We did projects with him. He was from the Life Physics group that met about 30 years ago now, and it did some wonderful work discovering what's called a working model, which is an alternative construct of how the universe works, kind of closer to quantum hologram theory. And so, but we had this ability to draw together intuitive people who were at a certain level and had certain questions. And then we did projects together, and then he was gone. We lost him, and now what kind of happened is people were doing continuing their own journey and discovery, things that brought them to the AR Bordon material and him personally. And then we kind of met back up because that was sort of facilitated by Aquarian Radio, Janet and Sasha Wesson. because they were very interested in AR Bordon's work, but they didn't meet him. He passed before they got to know more about it. So we're in the group that's kind of more the latter day. I'd say the latter day AR Bordon group, right? Because he had other groups. I met some people that studied with him, sort of remote viewing types of things in Texas, and one of those people knew PJ. So PJ was with AR Bordon, and you could tell me a little more about that, and then you can tell me how you got involved. So anyway, I want to start with, this is we the Anunnaki segment. So when we talk about AR Bordon, or we talk about certain experiencers, we are coming under the umbrella topic, we are the Anunnaki. And it's for people who have made a contact and realized they're kind of, I met my very tall Anunnaki ancestor, a telepathic contact, and I was coming to that somewhat kicking and screaming into that body of work, and now I enjoy it. I've learned so much about Sitchin's work and Dr. Cecil Lesson's work, and I'm more comfortable with it. But you have, that's not like your main gig. You started out early as an experiencer, not necessarily knowing that you were going to be coming into the Anunnaki material yourself. So my first question is, you grew up an experiencer pretty much. You had very early experiences. If you could talk about that a little bit with us.
Sure. Yeah, you're right. My experiences happened in my childhood as early back as when I was 5 years old. That's when it started. But at the time, I didn't realize it. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I was walking home one day, and I grew up in Sullivan, and it's a little town where you can leave your doors unlocked, and it's still safe for children to play. Even to this day, it's still safe for children to play out because their neighbors watch them.
What state? Sullivan, what state?
Sullivan, Missouri.
Gotcha.
It's about 60 miles southwest of St. Louis. And I was walking home. There was a widow woman that lived on our street that my mother knew, and she had a garden. And there was a male gentleman in the garden, and he called me over to him. He was older, grandfatherly type person, and he said, he had a bag of tomatoes in his hand, and he said, "Take these home to your mother. She'll enjoy them." And I said, "Thank you." And I took them to my mom and told her where I'd gotten them, and she said that her husband died. She said, "How did a man give you these tomatoes? She lives there all by herself." And I said, "He was in her garden." And, I didn't think any more of it. Well, later on in my life, I was living in a town not too far from Sullivan called Rolla, and me and my brother were outside playing in the yard. My mother and my older brother had gone into town to go shopping, and I was about 8 at the time, 7 or 8, and he, out of nowhere, he just looked at me and said, "Do you want to go and meet a friend of mine?" And I said, "Sure." So he said, "You're going to need your bicycle." And I was like, "Okay." And I thought we were going to meet a child. And we started down the road, and we must have gone about 1.5 miles down the road. And there was an old bullet-type trailer sitting off in a field right. The field ran right there beside the road. It was a 2-lane highway. And I didn't really think anything of it, but there was no truck or car attached to the trailer. And this gentleman got out, and it was the same gentleman who gave me the tomatoes. And the weird thing was, we ran to him like we knew him. He was like our family. We ran to him and we hugged him. And then we went into the trailer with him, and we sat there in the living room. And the very first thing that came out of his mouth, he said, "Do you know anything about reincarnation?" And I didn't know anything at all about reincarnation or what he was talking about. My mother was a Roman Catholic, and we went to Mass, and that sort of thing is frowned on in the Catholic religion. And he said, I can't tell you who you are. He said, but you need to find out who you are. And he said, you need You need to learn what reincarnation is. It's an important part of this. And he talked about some other things to me and my brother. I can't really remember everything we talked about, but things that stand out in my memory are he took a little silver vial container down from a shelf, and he put these white pills into his hands, and he said, one day food will be obsolete on this planet. He said these pills are going to give you everything you need for nutrition, for calories. He said you won't need to eat food at all. This is all you'll need. And I kept thinking to myself, how can a pill, like if you're hungry, how is a pill going to stop you from being hungry? Right about then, he stopped the conversation and he said, you two need to get home. Your mother's looking for you. She's about ready to call the police. So we gave him a hug goodbye, and then we went home. And sure enough, my mom was right in the process of calling the police. And then we told her we were fine. We never told her about him. We just said that we were out, talking to a friend. When I was 9 years old, we were still in Rolla, and the gentleman appeared again in my life. We started calling him the Traveler because I don't know why that stuck with us, but that's just a name that me and my brother called him. And this time around, he had an RV, and he lived across the street from us, but he had just moved in that week. And he said he had a wife, but we never saw her. And I didn't recognize him. He had a beard this time. He was still older gentleman, but this time he had a beard. And there was a group of us children playing outside. And he called us over because he had a one-step camera, the Kodak one-step cameras. They had just come out back then, and he told us he was getting ready to go on a vacation with his wife, and he wanted to try the camera out. And, looking back on it now, I thought it was just a distraction for us children to all gather together there. And he, as he was opening the package up, we were just all, watching him, waiting to take pictures. And this shadow came overhead. It was huge. And I looked up, and there was a UFO. It was the kind like the smaller crafts in Close Encounters. It was bright lights, different multicolored lights all around it. It was about the size of our neighborhood. It was huge. And I wasn't afraid at all. None of the children were. We were excited. We looked up and saw it, and he was like, come on, let's go. And we went chasing after it with him, and we went all the way to a field where we picked blackberries, and there was a barbed wire fence around it. And my brother started to head toward the fence. He was excited and wanted to climb over. And I remember screaming, stop, Jimmy, don't go. And he was like, why? And there was like an image in my mind of radiation, like it wasn't safe for him to go over there. And then the Traveler, he said, I'm going to take a picture of it. So he snapped a picture, and it turned out pure white. There was no craft on the picture. It was just a pure white image. And we all gathered around looking at the picture, and that is the last thing that I remember. I can't remember seeing the craft leave. The next thing I remember, we were walking back toward our neighborhood, and the sun was going down. It was evening. When the craft had came by, it was afternoon. The sun was shining brightly. It was the summertime. And I remember that because I remember thinking, how am I seeing those lights so brightly with the sun out?
And it must be really bright then, huh?
Yeah.
Well, that was kind of a missing time thing then, right?
Absolutely. I would say a good 4 hours of missing time.
Wow.
And we went home. I told my mother about it, and we were excited about it. And she told my older brother to call the radio station. He did, and they said, oh, there's a weather balloon in the area. The kids probably saw a weather balloon. the old weather balloon
for 4
story.
hours that they forgot.
Swamp gas, weather balloon.
Right, yeah.
And I was a kid. I didn't argue with her.
Yeah, I was just wondering, did you ever recall or have dreams or memories or visions of that?
Yeah, I did. The weird thing was there was 2 twins and a couple of other kids that played with us all the time. The next day when we went out to play, none of us talked about it. I never talked about it with my brother. It was weird. We talked about it that night to my mother. Never talked about it again. Never talked about it with each other. And me and my brother never discussed it until I was about 17 years old, and that happened when I was 9 and he was 12. I was about 17 years old, and all of us, we were sitting at the table one night, and I said, Jimmy, do you remember the UFO we saw when we were kids? And he was like, yes. And then it just poured out of us. Couldn't stop talking about it. And then I said, did you ever see the UFO leave? And he said, no. And I said, I keep wanting to fill in the blank, with like a ship taking off. But it was my own imagination of the ship taking off because I was just trying to fill the blank space in because I knew there was this blank space of missing time, and I was trying to fill it in with something. But I knew that it wasn't the truth. And then I started having dreams around that time. The very first dream that I had, I was walking up toward a cabin, and there was a dark-haired male that opened the cabin door, and there was a little girl with him. And he invited me in, and it was cozy inside. It was safe. It was warm. It was a comfortable type feeling. And I sat down at the table, and the first thing he did was hand me a piece of candy. And he said, here, take this. You need it. And I thought, okay. So I took the candy, and it was disgusting. It tasted like I was eating hair. It was like there was tiny little follicles of hair. It was sickening. And I woke up from the dream, and I could taste metal in my mouth. Wow. And I couldn't eat candy afterwards, after that dream for a while, because I would taste that taste, and it was just, sickening. And later on, when I started analyzing the dream, I started thinking that little girl in the cabin was me. That was me at 9 years of age. So I'm thinking that this was given to me then, when I was 9 years old.
Mm.
And that was the first time yeah.
I have the prompting to ask you the question, do you think that it had to do with some kind of implanting kind of thing, or technology or something? You know what I mean? Nanotechnology kind of thing? Yes.
Later, I never really thought about it. I remember when I look back, I was puzzled about it. And then later on, when I had come into contact with AR, he already knew everything about the incident. I didn't even have to tell him about it. And he said, what was in that candy? And he said, of course it was candy, because what would they give a child? And I said, yes, candy. He said that it was a metal filament. It was like oh, goodness, I wish I had his technical knowledge. But he said that it went throughout my body, and it was like electrical current, and it would help me to raise my capacitance to a higher level.
Yeah, okay.
So I could control it. Some people, he said, some people have the high capacitance all the time. That helped me to control it, so I could raise the capacitance when necessary, and then I could lower it back down to a normal rate, so it's more healthier for my body.
I understand, yeah.
And yeah, it was actually good for me, and that's what he said. You need this; it's good for you.
You need this; it's good for you. Man, we've gotten way deep into it. So I want to kind of double back a little bit before we talk too much. I want to get the AR story and how you met him. But one thing that you and I have talked about a couple of times in the past is that we both share an interesting heredity mix, being something that I've heard called the blessed blend. So you have Irish background and Cherokee background, and I am stunned at how many people I have met who've had, extra information, kind of like what you and I have, who have the same genetic heritage. And the only thing I could figure, for myself exploring it, is that the Irish has this, the gifts. They talk about the gifts, or the gifting, gift of sight, third sight, third eye, that sort of thing. And the Druidic kind of heritage. And on the Cherokee side, indigenous people had the shaman, side. And so it was kind of a situation where up until modern times, when these two people quite late in the game get religion, get plugged into the Catholic Church, which a lot of people from those heritages are. Before that, they were very appreciative of the second sight gifts, utilize them for daily life and for, managing life and mixing with nature and, could sense storms and lots of other types of abilities. And then they become Catholicized, and this is frowned upon, like I said, I believe with that. And basically, I feel like the combo of things I get from my native side that I've learned more about, and the Irish, my grandmother and my mom were always saying, "Oh, my Irish is going today," and that would mean they would be, picking up the phone call and they know who's calling, kind of stuff. We had the memorable Christmas when all of my aunts, my mother and my grandmother were the ones, my two aunts, my mother and grandmother, had kind of a tie with each other, loved each other dearly. And one year, even though all of them were living in different cities, they had managed to pick the exact same Christmas wrapping paper. So it's little funny things like that that would happen. My mother had the ability, if you picked a Christmas present for her and you gave it to her and it's still wrapped, if it had a bright color, she could get what it was. And it was weird, the kind of stuff that she could guess. But somehow she keyed on color, the color of the item. That came up again one time. For some reason, one thing I liked at school lunches was red Jell-O. And I came bopping in the house, "Hey, Mom, this is what I saw." And she said red Jell-O. And it's like, how'd you know that? I mean, they print the menus out for parents. But this was before they printed the menus out for the parents. So this was, we called it, and it was kind of downplayed because we weren't Catholic anymore. We were Protestant, but we were just a few generations Catholic. So, and it seemed a bit of a nuisance at times because, sometimes you don't want to know what's going to happen, So it was kind of downplayed, and I took an interest in it, and I had an interesting relationship with my second sight issues and psychic abilities and stuff. Because I was religious for many, many years, and again, you said frowned upon, and I think it's a control thing. I really believe that religion is trying to provide a be-all, end-all spirituality for everyone, and somebody going off book and having they don't care for it. Although when I was in charismatic religion, they had things like the gift of discernment and whatnot that they put names on the psychic giftings and, call it gift of discernment, word of knowledge, those kinds of things. To how, and they were a little more open to, exploring those gifts. I do believe those are human gifts. I don't think they're specific to spiritual people. I've seen people use the same. I do have family members, a couple generations back, who use those gifts in a very dark way. In my Irish side of the family, for scaring other people, controlling them, making them seem more powerful than they were. I've seen that side of it as well, dipping into dark art kind of things. I feel like I'm more natural. Like I prefer to think of it as a natural gift and to think of it in connection with our relationship with Mother Earth, I guess you'd say, the planet, the animals, the environment. I don't do any particular types of rituals too much. I do meditate. But, if you can talk about that a little bit, because I've talked about that quite a bit, what we felt was coming from our family influence that way.
Absolutely, yeah. I have Cherokee and Irish on both my mother and my father's side, and then my mother is half Norwegian. So that plays into that too. I think Norway and Norwegian background kind of plays into that Celtic and Nordic experience. The one thing I noticed with the Cherokee, I think it's the Cherokee lineage that is able to predict the sex of the children. I was able to tell every single baby that my sister-in-law had. I knew if it was going to be a male or a female. You know, like when she got pregnant with her first one, I said, oh, it's a boy. And the second time, it was a boy, and they were wanting a girl, and the third time came, and I said, it's a boy. And finally, when she got pregnant with the fourth one, I was like, you guys are in luck. It's a girl. They had 6 children, and each one I predicted the sex of without any problem. And then I wound up pregnant with Katie at the same time. She was pregnant with Zachary, her last baby. And she said, so what is this? And I said, well, one of us is having a boy and one of us is having a girl. I think you're having the boy and I'm having the girl.
Yeah.
So I've heard that too before, that is sort of in that Native American line of being able to determine the sex of the child. And you're right about the Irish heritage too. And there seems to be some kind of, when you get that combination together, you just get some amazing skills and abilities from children born of that blood.
Mhm. I can't guess the sex of a baby, but I know one's coming, and I also know, when one's going to be born or there's going to be a baby coming on the way. And the other one is I kind of know when people are going to pass away. That's a good thing. Like I get a sense of urgency, and I know I had a number of older relatives that passed over, and I just knew, within a earlier time than just like, they're in their deathbed. I mean, they're still walking around kind of. They're sick, but they don't look right to me, and then it doesn't feel right. And I had a real sense of urgency when my father was ill. I asked Spirit. I was praying. I was like, please let me get to see him one more time before he goes, because I was having a hard time, getting down to where he was at that particular time. It was a holiday time. It was a bit hectic. I didn't have a vehicle. I'd hitch a ride with a family member. And that was exactly what happened. I got to see him exactly one more time the night before he passed away. I mean, I knew. I was feeling it. I was going crazy, just urgently knowing I needed to be there. So, the things occasionally when something was going to happen,
The knowing. Yeah. The first time I experienced that with death was my sister-in-law's father. His mother was in Italy at the time, and I was sleeping on their sofa in the living room at the time, and he has a picture of his mother and his father in the living room. And I looked up at the picture one night, and it was probably around 1 a.m, and I heard this little voice in my head, and it said, she's on the other side now. And I thought, oh, my God, why would I think such a terrible thought, But it was true, and I knew it. Deep down inside of me, I thought, oh, my goodness, his mother has just passed away. And he got the telegram the next day that she had died from his sister in Italy. So that was my very first experience with that, to where I kind of knew she had passed away. She was on the other side. And I think I was about 16 at the time when that happened.
Oh, wow. Yeah, some of the ones I had were younger. I just had a feeling. I had a bad feeling. We were coming back from one of those holidays in the middle of the school year. I was talking to my mom. Everything's cool, and I just got this chill. I said, Mom, something terrible has happened. I don't know what it is. And we got home. I found out the next morning when my French teacher passed away. We were a close-knit bunch of those who were taking that class. And it was she was in a car accident at exactly the moment that I had my feeling, just weird, sad feeling washed over me. And, and you said a term that I truly love to know more about and tell people about, the knowing. And that's what it is. And people go, well, how do you know? And I go, I don't know how I know. I just know.
Exactly.
And that term, I think you said how did you figure out what that term was, or how did you come to use that? Because I really like it, because it does describe sort of how information just comes to you, all kinds of information. That would it, sometimes it'll even be a TV show, a book will suddenly come by, someone will mention something. I mean, it doesn't have to just come to your mind. It can come at you from another direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah, tell me that story. I think you told me this before, but go ahead.
Which one is that?
All about the knowing. When you came to the idea of that term, the knowing.
I think it started back when I was a really young child, and I just knew things, and I didn't understand how I knew them. But I knew when the phone was going to ring. I knew when neighbors were going to come by for a visit. I knew information. I remember I was sitting in front of the TV when I was 5, and we were watching an old black and white movie with Tyrone Power, and my mom said, he's a good-looking guy. I wonder what nationality he is. And I just piped out of nowhere, and I said, he's Spanish and Irish. And she's like, how do you know that? And I said, I don't know.
Wikipedia to check it. You don't have Wikipedia to check like you do now. That's awesome.
And it would just happen throughout my childhood. It would just be little things that would just come to me, and I would know them. Like, I would know when someone was lying. When they were lying or they were telling the truth, the only way I could explain it is the truth really does ring. And a lie, to me, it's like discordant. It's like a discordant note being played to me. So if someone is telling the truth, it really does ring to me. So there's really that expression, the truth rings or something like that. That expression means a lot to me. And a lie, it's a discordant sound to my ears. And I would always know when someone was telling the truth or they were lying. And I remember I was sitting in the classroom once, and I had a teacher, and I knew that she hated her job. I knew she couldn't stay. I was like probably 5 years old in kindergarten. And I knew that she didn't like being a teacher. And I wondered, why is she a teacher? She doesn't even like children. I don't understand why she chose this as her profession. So it was just there in her energy field, and I just read it. But I didn't understand what I was doing. Later on, after I met AR, the amazing thing about meeting AR was him being able to teach me the scientific reason or explanation for what we do, for what we have, and that it's absolutely scientific. It's not magic. It's not. What is he termed it? A mystic scientist.
Yeah,
because I think it's those with the natural gifts, but then also applying the science to it and why we can do what we can do and how we can do what we can do.
Yeah, go ahead and talk, since we got right back into AR again, just talk about here coming into the AR, I call it the constellation. I have these different study groups that I know about, and each one to me is like a constellation, or another person said pantheon. I like that. We're in the pantheon. Where you have these groups that I believe they're drawn together by their energy field. You were talking about they're resonating together, and yes. So that's that family feeling. But go ahead if you can tell that story. I'd like to hear it.
Yeah, well, after I had that one dream about the cabin, I continue to have experiences with this dark-headed male, and the next time I was pregnant with Katie, and he was in a lab coat. And he actually took a stick out of, he was stirring like a concoction. I mean, think of it like, you just imagine you're walking into a room and you're seeing a scientist there, and he's got like a test tube or something, and he pulled the stick out, and it was pink, and he told me that I was having a baby girl. And he told me that they would not be able to tell me the sex of the child when I went in for my sonogram the next day, and it all happened that way. And then the next time, I didn't see him. I was pregnant with Daniel, and I heard him, and he told me that I was allergic to Catholics, which I am. And he told me to stop taking the antibiotic. It was making my infection worse. And I feel like if he had, and I stopped taking it. I listened to him. And I went into the doctor the next week and told the doctor about it, and he said, yes, this definitely, could have caused some serious harm to the baby. So I feel like he saved my pregnancy with Daniel. And I didn't know who this person was who would come into my dreams or whose voice I would hear. And I started calling him my doctor. Like I dreamed about the doctor again.
He diagnosed you. Yeah, that seems fair.
Exactly. He had the lab coat on. And then one dream I had where he was young. In the dream, we were walking out under a constellation, and he was pointing to Orion, and he was telling me that his mother was from there, and he told me that he missed her, and then I got an image of like a ice wall, and it was almost like she was under a quarantine, and she happened to be caught in the quarantine, not because she was a bad person, but because she was just in the wrong place, at the wrong time, and he couldn't get to her, and he missed her. All of this led to a phenomenal experience that I had in 2003 that changed my life forever. I went to sleep one night, and later on we actually did an interview with someone, an Indian shaman, who explained that when you travel back through time the first time, you go through your blood, and you actually will go to your first ancestor here on Earth. And that sure does seem true, because it seemed like it was like layers and layers and layers I went through, and then I wound up in some place where we later think that it might be the mountains in Romania.
The Shigi Mountains or Carpathian Mountains? One of those two?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which at the time I didn't know where I was, but it was a mountainous region, and there was a road, and my doctor, it's crazy, but he flew I was waiting there beside the road, and those hovercrafts that are like in cave drawings, he was in one of those, and it landed like a helicopter down onto the road, and he got out, and he was in full uniform, military uniform. Not a doctor, military uniform. And I kept thinking, wow, why is my doctor dressed like this? And then
health plan. By the way, I want that health plan where your invisible guy tells you your diagnosis and you don't have to pay for office visit. I kind of dig that. But anyway, go ahead.
Exactly. And I went running to him, and I was like, "You've got to stop him!" I was just frantic. I was like, "You can't let him do this. You can't let him get away with it." And he's like, "Don't worry, I'm here now." And I was walking beside him, and I remember thinking, I felt very fatherly presence about him, and I remember being so proud to be walking beside him. And we went to this little device, and there was another, he waved his hand over it. It was like an energy bubble. He waved his hand over it, and another male appeared in it, and they were arguing about the human race. And the other man was wanting to annihilate the humans there, and he was fighting against it. And then I got pulled out of that from my mother waking me up, and she said it had taken her about 20 minutes to get me conscious, which I'm a very light sleeper. I'm the kind of person who will wake up as soon as somebody walks into the room. So it was very unusual. I didn't want to leave. I kept saying, no, I want to know what happened between these two men. And that led me on a journey. I started wanting to know who this was. Later on that night, I listened to a coast-to-coast AM show. My brother had told me, you need to listen to this radio show. It's kind of about all these really crazy things you'd probably be interested in. And it was Coast-to-Coast AM. And Jason Martell was on there, and he was talking about these two brothers who fought over humanity, and he was talking about the glass sand in the desert. And I was like, oh, my, this is my dream. Like, wow, who are these? And he never mentioned their names, so I was so frustrated. I was like, who are they? And then that kind of just stayed there with me for about 3 years. In 2006, I was on the internet, and I started saying, I'm going to find out who this person is who comes to me. I'm going to find out. And so I started doing some research, and I found out about the Sumerian god Enki and Enlil, and they were two brothers, and they warred over humanity. And I thought, oh, wait a minute. And I was thinking, because Enlil was supposed to be Yahweh, or, the good guy, and Enki was, like, supposed to be Lucifer. And I'm thinking, whoa, my doctor's the devil?
Wow.
I'm like, I didn't know what to think of it at first. It actually frightened me because I had that whole Catholic upbringing. So it kind of frightened me. I thought, I don't know if I want to know anymore. And then after I started reading more and more about the tale, I realized that he wasn't a bad guy at all, and I started learning about the Anunnaki and who they were, and then I started piecing everything together, and it was just like a puzzle. It's almost like, okay, they won't tell you. You have to find it out for yourself. And it went all the way back to when the traveler told me, you have to figure out who you are. I can't tell you who you are. You have to figure out who you are. And that's true. It was just like there was little trails and sort of a puzzle that I had to put together. And as I was piecing that puzzle together, I came across Michael Lee Hill. And that was my first connection to family, was Michael Lee Hill. I read something about him, and I went to Facebook, and there he was on Facebook. And I was so excited because I thought, oh, my God, he knows about the Anunnaki, and he knows about Enki. So I sent him a message out, and he read it, and he didn't message me back right away. And I thought, oh, God, he's going to think I'm crazy. Probably not going to message me back. And then he finally did message me back. And we started talking, and we formed a friendship. And it was amazing. It was my very first contact with someone I felt that kindred spiritedness with, someone who didn't think I was crazy, someone who understood what I was going through. And then he sent me an article that AR had written, and I saw the picture of AR, and I knew him. I looked at the picture, and I was like, I know this guy. And I read the article, and he said, you need to befriend him. He's on Facebook here. And I thought, oh, I don't know. Why would he want to be friends with me? He's this scientist, and he's I'm a nobody. Why would he want to be friends with me? And he just kept insisting, you need to send him a friend's request. So I sent him a friend's request, and he accepted it, but I never messaged him. And then both you and I had our contact experience with Sandra Sabatini, and she is actually the one who introduced me to AR as far as getting into the group, because her and I became friends, and then she said, you belong in our group, and then it started the whole meetings that we had with AR you were a part of, and Michael was a part of. And
so this is like 2012, 11?
2012, yep.
Yeah.
And after I actually became friends with AR, he said he always knew that I was coming into the group. He had actually told PJ, he said there will be somebody coming into the group that is going to mean a great deal to you, which it turned out to be my husband.
Yeah, I know. You guys, he was the matchmaker there, or Maybe you guys were in a previous life. I don't know how that works, but yeah, it's really cool. I'm in a partnership that came through my interest and my passion in seeing, and that's a whole different experience of life to have.
Well, isn't it interesting that we interviewed Brett.
Yeah, I know. We interviewed him. Man, he was over the hill, like he was over the moon. After that interview, I just want you to know. But yeah, we have this side circle, and it's the thing that's interesting to me too when we have the couple thing going, you with PJ and me with Brett, is that we went through other relationships and situations and stuff where we didn't have the ability to formulate the words of what was on our mind, what our quest was. Unless somebody else has been on the quest, and Michael's a good one. I made up a term based on, after I met Michael, we use the term experiencers. You and I do some work with experiencers. I made up the term integrated experiencer because this was someone I met who has had experiences. Michael's been in the UFO Hunters, UFO Hunters with Bill Burns? I can't remember. Anyway, he's been on programs. He's been interviewed. He's been a radio host. He's been speaking now, in conferences. And the thing is he started out with these strange experiences, but he really wanted to know, like, what is this? And then not only has he done the work like that, but to me, the integration process is when you finally say, okay, I know that from the knowing and from my experiences. AR said a great phrase. He might have got it from someone else. Everything's earned in this creation, and you've now, learned enough to understand it, and now you integrate that into your life. And once you've done that enough, you're cooking with gas with that thing. You don't have any doubts. You're not worried about credibility, and you're the best researcher on your own case. And I gave that term because I saw that in Michael so much. He's a good friend and just enjoy his work. But that's what AR was as a mentor kind of person. Now he's going back to earlier iterations. He was involved in the life physics group, which was a group of physicists who were never gave the real name, except I don't know if the AR did completely, but I mean they all had pseudonyms because they were actually in universities and chaired, professors and whatnot. But they had a curiosity about, they had doubts or concerns, or there's a standard model, and the academia has this nasty bit of being consensus reality based, or what I call the consensus reality show, and they're very much involved in being financed by business and the corporatocracy, of our government, and so they kind of have to toe a line, I honestly think that science progresses by the oldest guys that chair the things dies, and so now we can finally move to the next concept because the guy that was controlling who got fired, who got hired, and all that is dead, and so now we can progress. I mean, our academia, our process of how we human beings process things was very hierarchical, and so we have to have someone with degrees and with education, and there are experts, and they tell us how things are. And people like you, me, and Michael, and others that we, for me, I do not get to do I tried to do the university thing. I had a dread disease in my junior year. I was not able to finish school. But I found school distracting. I felt like when I thought I would go to school and I would learn things like I did in the knowing, which I had since I think recall early as 5 years old. I noticed that I was freaking out grown-ups around me a lot, because I was blurt out stuff that I wasn't. One time, I had an uncle or a cousin come to visit, and nobody knew that he had secretly married this lady that he was with. He didn't want anybody to know for some reason, and I just knew it, and I blurted it out, and I didn't get in trouble, but I freaked everybody out. I learned young, like 6 or 7 years old, to shut my mouth and not say what I know, because I didn't know I wasn't supposed to know it. And then it was a situation where I couldn't help it, and I a couple of, I don't know, like the early days of, I believe it was MTV or one of those kind of channels. They had this show. It was called Pop-Up Video. And they would play a music video, and then they have this like popping sound, like, you know, and they would have a little fact, a little bubble would come up, and it would tell some fact about the musician or the band or the location where they filmed the video or something like that. And I'm watching the show, and I'm going, oh, my gosh, this is me. My whole life has been pop-up video. I would be living my life, doing my thing, and what felt to me like often useless facts would just pop into my head about whatever it was I was it was like I was picking up Wikipedia before there was Wikipedia, you know, and then I doubted myself a lot because, like, you don't necessarily, you know, we're taught to value information that comes to us from books, magazines, experts, that, right? And this was coming out of the ether, it's coming out of nowhere. And I had a lot of self-doubt about it, but over time, and now you were talking about, do you know somebody lies? I have problems with that because I think in my heart of hearts, I really hope that person isn't lying to me. So my heart of hearts, and especially, you know, dudes, right, dating, I was easily lied to because I believed the highest and best for them, and I didn't want to believe that they would lie to me. So I pulled the wool over my own eyes and would ignore my intuition.
I did that all the time when I was younger. I did. It's like a self-protection kind of thing.
Right.
And then the sad part is, and it's really hard being in a relationship with someone, too, because the father of my children, he couldn't handle it. He used to call me a witch because, you know, he would say he was doing something, and I would tell him exactly what he was doing, and he would just look at me, and it would freak him out. And you can't help but knowing what they're doing. I don't want to invade someone's privacy, you know, but it just happens. It's there. And you automatically know what, you know, what if he told me he was doing something and he was doing something else, it was just right there. I knew exactly what was going on. And it was really hard being in a relationship like that because if the other person is being very dishonest and it was just petty things, too. It wasn't anything really serious. It was just petty things. But all those petty things keep adding up, and it destroys the relationship. It destroys the trust. And so it was really difficult for me to trust people because of it. It was not people in general, but just it was very difficult for me to be in a relationship because I always knew what they were doing, even when I didn't want to know.
Right. That's what I meant. I pulled the wool over my own eyes. Because I didn't want to believe they were like that. And so I think probably I knew they were lying to me, but I was letting it happen because, well, psychic people or empathic people, I know that they've talked about empathic people often are drawn to narcissistic, sociopathic kinds of people because I don't know why. It's like our kryptonite. You know, we hope we can use them or hope we could somehow. We know a lot of those people have had like nasty childhoods and bad experiences, and we think, like Pollyanna, we're going to.
Our heart goes, exactly. We can help them. We can help them.
I also think, too, that we see inside people very deeply, and I don't care how rotten someone is, there is a spark of
redeeming quality.
Yes, there is, and we let that cover over, you know, the reality of it. What's nice now, and we've talked about this, is now we are in relationships with people who are like that.
Yes.
Who are
they're like us. It's the most amazing thing because when you're talking about something, they know exactly what you're talking about. So you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to know. You know, PJ doesn't call me a witch. He understands exactly what's going on.
Well, then he'd have to be a warlock, then, wouldn't he? Yeah, exactly. We're psychic. We're intuitive. We're psychic. We know. And there's challenges there too, but generally speaking, that with any of the people that we're talking about, the feeling of, well, I say there's relatives and there's family. There's that resonance. There's that. We are a type. We're like a type that was very useful back in the day before we had our modern society. We had our educations and all those things. We were the type of people that helped the tribe. Brett and I talk about the tribe a lot, helped the tribe, manage, figure out which herbs will help and which ones won't harm, and to figure out, all kinds of day-to-day problems that we now have. We now have YouTube for. The other day I was trying to do something, and I thought, I'll look it up on YouTube, and there you go. I know how to do it now. But we needed those people to have that genetic memory, maybe, of how to do stuff. It's amazing when a young child, one of my children, could sit down at 4 or 5 years of age and play keyboard and music. Both my children are musical, and it was like out of nowhere. I was very musical inclined out of nowhere, and that's reaching into the genetics and DNA and the morphogenic field and stuff to do that. But yeah, when you have that heart connection where you're similar, and it's like it's a whole different experience. And I think that we're cut out of society a little bit, and so it's a lonely road to find out who you are. That's the key, because I don't think I was going to be in the right relationships until I figured out and accepted myself, who I am, and integrated my own knowledge that I was learning, and then walked in it. Like the thing that preceded my being with Brett is walking in my truth, wanting to know more, researching all this stuff, having a love of wisdom, right? Philosophy, love of wisdom about this stuff, and that's how we all ended up. And it's interesting then, we get into this group with like AR Bordon, we see all the people around us that are drawn to this, and it's very interesting how many other things we had in common. But this is
similar
the bloodline
experiences and the things, their abilities and their skills, they were all very similar. We didn't know each other before this group, and yet we did know each other.
Yes.
That's how I felt. I just felt like, I remember the first time I heard Joshua's voice, I instantly knew who he was, and he told me he had the exact same experience with me. He heard my voice. We were doing a Skype chat together with AR, and I was just like, I know him, and he was like, I know her.
I had several people tell me that they knew that my energy signature.
You were familiar to me instantly.
Yeah, same here. And, man, we just dug right, like, first conversations were so deep compared to normal conversations.
Yeah.
Like, we were right there. We are talking about the stuff that would, raise the hairs on other people. We're right in there.
Exactly.
Recently, we had some blowback of the fact that AR Bordon wasn't too much into the Anunnaki thing. And since this is a We Are Anunnaki night, right, I want to get into that a little because I'm going to tell the story real quick of how I got into that track. I'd heard about the story of Anunnaki and Lo and all that, but being raised with in a Christian tradition or biblical or whatever, that was not I wasn't going to read something on the side right away until I got my belief systems open for that. And then what happened was I had a problem with my ex-husband. I hadn't talked to him in about 10 years. I had a feeling he was going to contact me. And I had a protection order against him before that had expired. And I had a dream. He was in my space, and he indeed contacted me on Facebook. And we hadn't talked in 10 years. He'd moved on with his life. I'd moved on with mine. But I don't think I had processed certain feelings of fear, basically, and I hadn't really conquered some feelings that I had about that. I had very, I don't want to say victimization. It's just that I was still working on taking my power back personally, internally. And I, at the time, was doing something called soul singing, which is just singing, just whatever language, whatever. I was drawn to do that, and my voice dropped down into a low register, and I sounded like Klingon. And Janet recently said that Anunnaki speech, by the way, sounds like Klingon. Probably is. And this voice came out. This is my first time channeling. And I'm like, this voice came out singing this low, basso profundo, as low as I could sing. And then I said the name of this being. And I spoke vocally for just a minute or two. kind of shocked that this was happening to me. And then I had then a flood of telepathic information came in, and this being that identified Anunnaki and identified as my ancestor wanted to help me with my my feelings about this person in my life, and particularly along the lines of talking about the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and I had really not gotten a grip on that balance, because I had imbalanced relationships. So that's, I'm freaking out that this being is saying they're Anunnaki, but on the other hand, this really helped me, having this telepathic conversation with this being. I had a sequence of dreams with that, and I confronted feelings that I hadn't resolved. And so now I have this, this was not my first telepathic contact. This was, I don't know, fifth or sixth one. And so then that opened my door to being curious, and shortly after that I found an article by AR Bordon. It was the one where he talks about alien contact is something we can't ignore. And it was right on the beam what I was wanting to know more about. And like I said, recently people have wanted to focus on AR's work scientifically and with the
idiom material work. And
yes, and that's great. But honestly, he was a wealth of information. Besides,
he was, and the Anunnaki thing was a part of his daily life. I mean, PJ was with him the last 5 years of his life, and it wasn't a hobby. It was who he was too, as much as it was who we are.
Yeah. Because this is where we get this from. This is this heritage DNA thing. What's been taught about the morphogenetic field, okay, is that as species evolve and grow over time, they accumulate knowledge and they share it all with each other. That's why birds and other animals just instinctively know how to live, is because they have this shared morphogenetic field, or what AR introduced me to, the biokind, biomind. And it was the idea that when you see birds fly together, they all swoop at the same time. And scientists try to understand, how did they all know to turn that way or this way? Or fish, they're all balled up in a school of fish, and they all turn the same direction at the same second, instantaneously, nanosecond. And that's because they're genetically linked. Their kind, or their pod, or whatever, school or whatever. They're in resonance with one another, just like we all recognize each other. We're in resonance because we're all on the same channel.
What AR told PJ was he was our overfunction and we're the hub.
Okay. And so the idea is that we're all linked together, resonating in the same area of interest, same life experiences, same abilities, and that's what these are the kinds of concepts, but it came from the fact that we also came from the same family lines, and that we had this incursion from the Anunnaki into the human genome, which continue, stepped us up. It might have caused some problems too, I don't know, but it just happened. This is our Irish ancestors marrying our Cherokee ancestors, and here we are.
Exactly. When I went back through, and then later on we did a show, and we were talking to, I can't remember his name, but he's a amazing shaman, and he was talking about going through, he was talking about time travel through the blood, and he said, do you remember who that was?
Was that Dan Winter?
No, it was, he's actually a Native American, and Sandra was doing a show with him, and I called in on the show and talked to him, and he was talking about how the very first time that you travel back in time, you will go back to your very first ancestor here on Earth. And it just all resonated with me because I went back through time in 2003 to my very first ancestor on Earth. And how surprising is it to find out that it's Inky?
Yeah, it could very well be, yeah.
And you're just
that's a thing, a shamanic ability is that you go back through your DNA lines. I met a number of my ancestors that way because they're with you. They're part of who you are, and they pass on their not just their energy signature, which I think plugs into their information stream of who they were and who they are. And I've been able to bring forth some shocking things from the family history that I've discussed with a few family members, and they've also discovered some of the same things, because our ancestors are with us, they are us, and their knowledge they gain helps us if we choose to pick up on that. I think that's a gift.
Is that kind of what they term genetic memory?
Yeah, I think it's a gift to be able to access all those lessons, because, you know, when you go through life, you're going through different. I was very close to my grandmother because she had a bumpy time in her life. I widowed a couple times and whatnot. I think in life, when she was here with me, I identified with her, and I learned so much from the fact that she didn't have a nice, easy, breezy life. She had challenges, and I had challenges, and we were close because I learned from her. But also, I think we need that. We come into a pretty short life iteration, and we need some built-in access to knowledge. And so, you know, people will play it down, but they'll say, I had this problem, and then I had this dream, or it came to me. Inventors will do that. They'll work on a problem, and they'll lay down, and then, boom, they have a dream, and it's the solution to the problem. And that's that reaching into that morphogenetic. Rupert Sheldrake talked about the morphogenic field or the morphogenetic field, and it's that a body of information we all share that kind of comes with us doing the earth dance and doing the thing, and we get some insight and things that helps us along the way. I do believe in that.
I do too. It makes sense.
I'm glad we have that, because I think we get through a lot of stuff because we have that. But what was the thing is okay, so you and I both had observed these things and experienced these things, but isn't it an aha moment when we hit the life physics group information, the working model, the terminology, which is real chewy, a lot of big words there that you have to learn. And we're trying to, I want to mention to people that we've been working with Aquarian Radio to try to have these conversations and share this. I want to share with people that on Facebook, we have a group called the Writings of AR Bordon. If you put that up in the search thing, and you ask to join the group, either Charlotte or myself will add you, and that's where you can ask some questions and meet some people. Then I call the Latter-day group. I would love it if the kind of the first group, so the ones that do AR back in the day and studied all this stuff, I would love it if they'd come forward and tell us more, but maybe they can't. And so we're the Latter-day groups. AR was amazing because he didn't believe that this information should be stocked away in a laboratory somewhere or white paper somewhere. He worked really hard to get it out any way that he could. So there's some writings there in that Facebook group, the Writings of AR Bordon.
He believed it belonged to humanity, and
yes,
that was his belief system until the day he passed away. He was working hard at that.
Yeah, just have to mention, if people hadn't heard any of this story before, he did pass away in 2013, and it was quick acting cancer, and I don't know how much you want to talk about that because it was quite a story. But boy, go ahead.
Yeah, we had been out in California, and I got a chance to spend 2 weeks with him, which were amazing. Karen, do you remember during Beta when we would send our intention to him? Well, one of the times when I was sending my intention to him, I actually traveled with it, and I went to the platform, and he stood there, and I gave him a hug, and I remember having the conversation with Sandy, telling her, that he is at least 6 feet tall. He's a tall man. From hugging him energetically. Well, when I met him, I'm telling you, it was the same exact feeling. It was him.
Wow.
It was his energetic.
I want to go back to some terms you threw out there because most people don't know. this Latter-day group that we did group intentions, different activities together, and Beta was the name of the sort of overall name of the group, and I'm not going to say who else wants to say. They can say if they were part of it or not. And then the platform, that was like a shared, like an etheric shared space that we all, when we were doing our intention experiences together, that was our shared space to work from, so that our intentions would be kind of drawn together to work on different problems and issues. And that was the way I think it strengthened our connection with each other. Absolutely. Quite a bit, those of us that participated. And I think I have found him in the etheric as well, in a little bit different platform. And, this is a thing where those of us developing this, we go to the places where there's interdimensional beings. There's our ancestors. There are our alien, which you call aliens. I call them visitors. This is what I call this kind of grouped it all together. I call it the innernet, INNERNET. And I just found out today I'm pretty close to where the SETI facility is, so they're reaching out with their big dish antennas trying to, call ET, find a signal of maybe their television programs. Maybe they're smart enough not to watch television programs. I don't know. But basically, I found that they probably are not on the right frequency because this internet is a shared, as INNERNET, our actual internet is modeled out of it after it. And basically, it's the shared central thing that we are all expressions of source is like the start of this thing, and that people can develop the ability to tune into that space, I guess. And one thing that's important, back to the aforementioned not watching television, you got to clear your space to do this. And I think anyone can do this. Anyone listening to this, take notes. I learned some of this before I met AR. That's why I was so excited to find out his information, because he put terms and ideas to understand what you and I and others were already doing, and explaining why we could contact a dead relative, or we could go back, like you said, travel through time. And I've actually done that as well, where I've gone to, usually an ancestor would show me a scene. I actually had one ancestor who was involved in the potato famine. I got very interested in the Irish potato famine. That's how my ancestors came from Ireland to America. And it was awful, because that was an awful time. And I had read about it, and just getting more of a sense of a level of death, the people dropping like flies from starvation all around, that this is this feeling that I can't even explain. I went through that to try to understand that event more. It's a big wound, I think. There's several generational wounds. And the Irish have the potato famine. The Native Americans have the Trail of Tears for the Cherokee, as well as other things that happen to them. So, be careful. Bring your box of Kleenex when you go back to your ancestral line. It's very dramatic.
That's true.
I felt how the people felt, and that was really dramatic. Taught me a lot about why, for instance, both the Irish and Native American communities have so much alcoholism and other issues, is because there's wounds. There's like long-standing wounds in the genetic family experiences, and they're not even subliminal. I mean, just stories that the ancestors that I had that were still living that told me were the warriors going through the Depression, going through the World War II. Oh wow, I advise talking to your older relatives while you still have them, because they are treasure that you may not even know you've got. Anyway, so AR, yes, he did pass. Wonderful teacher. He was a difficult teacher, because he's not going to give you the answer. He's going to make you work for it. I always told us he told us key little bits of information to go ourselves and look into. That's one thing I did a lot with this stuff. Did you have a similar experience?
I did. There was a lot of times when I would ask him a question and he would say, "You already know." Why are you asking me? And it's true. I already knew. It's like you just wanted that extra confirmation, from someone else. And it was really, 2013 was a really hard year for us because after we had left California and came back to the East Coast, one of PJ's really close friends had contacted him and told him that AR was taken to a hospital. And then we talked to him the next day, and he didn't know what was going on at the time. And then later on when we heard from him, he told us that he was diagnosed with stage 5 pancreatic cancer. They thought it was pancreatic cancer, but he didn't know what stage it was. And then he called us back and told us that it was stage 5. And the very last conversation the weird thing was when we left California, there was a moment when I was saying goodbye to him, and I felt like I wasn't going to see him again. It's that feeling you have,
Oh, yeah.
And it was just a very profound moment. We looked into each other's eyes, and I knew I wasn't going to see him again. So when all of it happened, I wasn't even surprised. It was like it didn't shock me. I wasn't surprised at all. And then the next thing we knew, he had passed. And it seemed so sudden. It was literally within 1 week of him going into him passing away. So we didn't even have any time to prepare for it. I think we were in shock for a long period of time. I know PJ was. He took it really hard because AR was like a father to him. He was like an adopted father. He knew him since he was 3 years old.
Well, yeah.
So it was the short period of time that I spent with him. Before that, getting to know him throughout 2012, we had a lot of long conversations with each other via Skype, and during one of those conversations with him, he told me to call him Dad because I felt like he was my father. It was that same feeling like you would have for your parents. And it meant so much to me because I lost my dad when I was 2 years old, and I never had a father figure in my life. And then he knew about that, and he was trying his best to fill that gap in my life. And then after meeting him, he felt like my dad. When I hugged him, it felt like my dad. So when I call him my dad, he truly was my dad in spirit, if not biological.
No, I understand that, yeah. And I was told by Michael, and I was, I had a lot of thoughts about that. And, it's kind of a thing where, when you go back, I spent a lot of 2013 really in between worlds. I had a lot of stress, and my choice for dealing with my stress was to be in between worlds a lot more. I mean, I was realizing I was kind of going out of body, but I kept enough in me to kind of function. And that was to learn and to protect myself. I'm learning now how much they call it disassociation, but literally I feel like I'm over there in the corner or up in the roof or something. And it's a safety mechanism I developed very early, and there's psychic reasons for the way that occurs. It's a trauma-based thing. But it's also a gift because I'm able to go quite a long way in painful situations and think clearly and do what I need to do. Just fall apart later, right? And so when this thing happened with AR, and I'm already going through other things, and I, dealt with it that way. So I thought about the things that he taught me. I continued to dig in further to what he showed me, and I did find him in one of those spaces like that. But there seems to be just a need to, it's like I feel like, and we're, thinking about the Linkage Institute, which is this idea that he had, and he told to Michael, and Michael talked to me about it, and it's really a thought form. It's like an idea. And we're trying to figure out, because most of us who were in the group have their own study that they did up to the point where they met AR. Then there's acceleration that happens because the information just accelerates you in connecting the dots, making connections, integrating information. Then we had this where he withdraws or he's not there exactly the way he was before. And it's like we have to go on. And then now we come here later participating in this idea of the linkages. And now we've grown. Like you and I come back to talk to each other, anyone I've talked to. We have really taken that and gone somewhere with it in our personal lives. And and so now, like, we've had time to marinate on some of the ideas. We're having some challenges with people who were involved in AR before, some of the more scientific-minded people, telling us we're getting it wrong. And I'm frustrated with that because there is the academic path, and I think people who are able to do that, I'm happy for them. I was blocked from that because I was sick at a very strategic time and made the decision not to continue for financial reasons as well, and chose this other way to learn things. And so that's the mystic part. He talks about mystic scientists. So this is what it's always been. It's been some people are more drawn to the science side and learning it from that path, and others, for whatever reason, aren't able to. By the way, going to college costs money, and a lot of people right now are paying student loans in their got a science degree or a teaching degree, and they work at Starbucks. I had a bus driver once who told me he was a nuclear physicist, and I thought, well, how do you go from being a nuclear physicist to driving a bus? But hey, you've got to make a living. So the thing is we're now more in a stage of needing to dig into the mystic side, because some people who would be very intelligent and would benefit by a college education or whatever are making a conscious decision not to because of where the economics are right now. Getting a student loan and then having a loan to pay off when you can barely, make your rent is a horrible position a lot of people are. At the same time, we've had this, this consciousness raising that's coming, people waking up, becoming more interested in the psychic side or the intuitive side or consciousness studies. And, again, grateful AR came out with the idiomaterial world, just all the terminologies, the idiomaterial, the idea that the material world comes from an idea, that every material object has, I tell the Shrek story, is that you watch the movie Shrek, and he's a animated figure, and he's running through the forest. And the thing is that he's a figure in the story, but he's made of information. Like, they had to say that he's this tall in this environment, and he's green, and he has a donkey friend, and he wears this kind of outfit. That all had to be done with mathematics. Then he had to be rendered through computer process, and then the image comes of him. Wherever he moves in that environment, his whole coding has to go. If he goes over into his house, the coding has to go, mathematically into the house with him. So we carry with us, and I love learning these kinds of concepts from AR. We carry with us our own coding. And that's why we can read stuff, because some people can just read or feel or whatever, tune into that coding and get extra information as a result. So that was a great concept to learn about idiomaterial physics. This is what the working model was idiomaterial physics, otherwise known as the quantum hologram. For studies, people who've studied that side of it. And I think that it's good when people do the physics stuff, and we need more of that. I think when it goes that direction, there's a system that goes with it, and if they can somehow endure the system to get the knowledge and come back out like AR did, he modeled so well, as he learned physics, learned the E equals MC squared normal stuff, but allowed himself to also really dig into the math and learn this other, type of idea. But again, he honored the other way to learn, the knowing. He utilized people who had the ability to do this in his studies. They worked I'm not sure what the concept was, but that was the model. It's intuitive psychic people using advanced remote viewing to dig into the substructure of our reality, which is energetic at the base. I mean, the particles down, small, past the Higgs boson, boom, you're in energy, right? And now we have wonderful scientists like Nassim Haramein who also talks about that. And so, you know, you and me being psychic kind of people, we're coming at it, we're seeing the same thing, but we're coming at it from another view. But isn't it nice to know that there's a scientific base for what we've felt, visualized,
Absolutely.
and experienced? And we're talking today because we have such a love for that, you know, that ability, what you call the knowing. I wanted to ask you a few other questions because you've had a significant now experience with the Anunnaki, and I know that you have this thing called the throne room thing, a vision or a dream or
that was actually it was during a tasking that I had done. The tasking was to go down to Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, and so I had never been to Mammoth Cave. I've been on the interstate going past Mammoth Cave, but I've never actually been to the cave itself. You know, when we are using our vector intention, or we are, with me, I never knew it was vector intention. You know, if I had an out-of-body experience when I was 17 years old, and was able to confirm that with every relative who was a part of that. And I did it independently and very scientifically, and it was more to prove it to myself that it was real, that it happened. I knew it happened inside, internally. I knew it was real. But I needed to prove it to my mind that it happened as well, and I did that. The only thing I didn't do was write it down, and when I was telling AR about it, he said, everything was perfect. He said, but you know what you didn't do? And I said, what? He said, you didn't write it down. That would have made it complete. So he said, from now on, when you have experiences like that, write them down and record it. And so I was headed toward Mammoth, and I saw the cave and went inside the cave, and I realized that the cave was a really ancient place, and it was a definitely a hub of Native American spirituality centered around that area. And for something was drawing me away from the cave, though, and it was drawing me further east. So I went further east, and I went to this clearing. We later on pinpointed it as the Daniel Boone Forest. And there was this clearing, and I knew that this was a sacred space, and I was talking about the Native Americans that gathered there to meet their ancestors. They called them their ancestors, and they were from the stars. And so this was sort of like a Stargate area where they would go. It was a very peaceful place, and they would have meetings, and their ancestors would teach them things there. And during the course of that, I saw the clearing, and then the next thing I know, I'm seeing this huge pyramid-type structure, and there's an obelisk that's just like the Washington Monument, huge, and this rocky terrain, and I'm thinking, where am I? I was just in this clearing, and now I'm here. And then I was drawn to go inside of the pyramid, and I went down this corridor and to the right, and I went into this room, and there was this light emanating from this room, and I can't explain the light. It was like no light we have here. It was like it was coming from all around the room, and it was sort of a light bluish color. And I didn't know where I was. I saw this structure, and it was like a boomerang, and it was like a council table, and there was these chairs there, and there was this metal device that came out into a shape of a half of a pyramid going forward and then half of a pyramid going inside. Well, later on I described this. All of this was recorded and it was given to AR, and he got extremely excited about it, and he wanted to have a conversation with me. So he wanted to hear it from my own words, and I talked to him about the experience, and he said, so do you know where you were? And I said, Mammoth? And he said, no. He said, that place you were at is called the throne room. And he was so excited because he had never talked to anybody about the metal device that they use to enhance their ENS abilities. And I knew about it. So he knew I'd been there. When I described the throne room to him, he knew that I had been in that throne room. So he was so excited about that because he himself had been there. And there were details that I knew that only a person who had been there would know. And that was the first time I was ever in. I think it's termed as the center, or I think that he said something about it was called the center, the command center or the center. And the throne room is a really big deal to them. And then later on during beta, I went there again. And then there was actually some Anunnaki there, and I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, you feel like you walked into the White House, and there's the president, and you're going to be thrown out at any moment. And then this rogue figure said, you belong here. So I was like, oh, okay. So I felt comfortable then. And I felt like I could go there anytime I wanted to then.
Oh, that's neat. Did you continue to visit there? Because I've done that with different places that I was, like I said, when I was kind of
did. I went on a journey. I went on a journey once with one of our fellow teammates, and I'm not going to say who it was because he's not here, but we kind of got in trouble because we went to a place we weren't supposed to go to unknowingly. We walked into this room, and there was these tall, oh God, it's hard to explain what they looked like. They were gray, and they had these luminescent eyes, and they all reacted together. Like when they turned, just like you were talking about, like hive-minded, they all turned and looked at us at once. And we just knew we were not supposed to be there. And so we left that area, and I actually went to the throne room for safety because it was like like I'd been there before. And so I went to the throne room for safety. And while I was in the throne room, I noticed there was a sort of a thing on one of the walls where it was like a portal, and it's like they could travel to different dimensions through that portal. Yeah. And I was drawn to it, but I didn't want to go through it because I didn't know where I was going to wind up at.
Oh, you didn't see the roped off area or the caution tape or whatever it was that you were supposed to keep from going in that room.
But later on, you were kind of chastised for going there and said, you were kind of in an area you weren't allowed to be.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I want to grab a detail because I've been curious about it because we have all these cast of characters in the Anunnaki story, and you have a character that almost everybody, non-Sumerian, pronounces Ningishita, and you told me a different pronunciation for that name. And I want you to talk about it because I think you're getting that somehow, that idea from, the knowing, I think. And when you said it, I went, that's how you do it.
It's Ningishta.
Ningishta. See, that sounds better to me for some reason. And
that's what I got. That is how you pronounce it. That's how it came to me. And then everyone was pronouncing it, and I was thinking, wait, I must be pronouncing it the wrong way. But that is how I'm hearing it. I'm hearing it Ningishta.
Oh, that's when you say it, it seems right to me. So it's funny how these little details, happen. I've got certain names I won't mention, but that I know, and I don't know how I know them, and I know how they're supposed to be pronounced, and I know who it's attached to, and it's funny how that knowing thing kind of works. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious, like on your own, like where are you? We're gonna kind of wrap up, and I kind of want to know where are you going with your own quest? Because this is my interest, is that every person has their own quest. We come together. It's like we bookmark where we were, and we come back together and talk about things, and we've all learned something new. And because this Linkage Institute, the word linkage, I think, is important. We're all linked together, learning this. I think too. This is not just us. It's just lots of people are more and more and more getting a feeling. Some people, they say they go to night school. You go to sleep and you wake up tired the next morning because you feel like you've been in some kind of college course and crazy downloads and it's not even the people who you think. It's like your Aunt Millie suddenly is doing this. So it's kind of who was his a nice little church lady and only drove her car on Sundays, kind of thing. And all of a sudden she's interested in this. It's interesting how we're all together, being instructed, being brought into some kind of knowledge base that I think is going to be better for us. I think we're seeing the experiments of the past, doing combustible fuel. Hey, we're still burning fuel like cavemen. Maybe we could graduate out of that. Nikola Tesla tried.
That'd be nice.
Well, but it's funny how it's like together. I have conversations and we're all like grappling with some of the same concepts. Where do you think personally you're like at in your understanding of things right now? What's your puzzle pieces that you're working with right now?
Well, I'm really feeling a great sense of peace now. Fear, I was letting fear get to me. And I think that fear is probably the most detrimental thing that happens in our life because it keeps us from reaching our potential. It keeps us from being where we need to be, who we need to be. So for a while there, I was sort of giving into that and allowing fear to dictate what I was going to do with my future. And then one day I just said, you know what, I'm not going to anymore. I'm not doing this. Like, I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to, do the things, pursue the things that interest me, and I'm going to talk about the experiences that I've had. I'm not going to be afraid to talk about the things that's happened in my life. I know a lot of people feel shamed about having an experience, UFO contact. They think people are going to think they're crazy. But if everyone started talking about all of the strange things that have happened in their life, everyone will notice that every single one of us on this planet has had something unexplained happen to them, something that mainstream science can't explain to them, something that the normal part of society would say that's crazy. I think it's absolutely normal. I think that a lot of people have all kinds of experiences all the time. And I think that they are normal. They're not supernatural in any way, shape, or form. They're normal. They occur all the time. They're normal experiences. We just don't understand them yet. So I think as our consciousness broadens and we start understanding things from a different angle, then we're going to start seeing that all of this stuff that's happening, all the abilities that you and I have, all of the abilities that a lot of people have are absolutely normal. I think that future generations are going to have, this is going to be nothing to them. They're just going to be like, oh, yeah, okay, we do that. Because for us, it's like breathing. That somebody asked me one time, they were like, so what does it feel like to be like you? And I thought, I don't know, because this is who I am. This is who I've been since I was born. I don't know how to be any other way. It feels completely normal and natural to me.
Yeah. I want to add to that. I love that, because fear, false evidence appearing real, and one good, I don't know why I'm picking on TV watching today, but, kind of cutting the back on the normal consensus reality show is to realize how much fear is built into everything. We're afraid we'll have bad breath, so we'll get breath mints.
Exactly.
It's like fear is the motivation for us to buy things. or to participate in whatever, because it's fear-based. And we're pulled away from our individuality and into the group, thing where we, like in school, when we go through being shunned or teased, or in our families when we have these weird experiences, and we want to talk about it, nobody else does. It's false evidence appearing real. When we get down to the thing we're afraid of, there's good things to fear. You don't want to walk out in front of a car.
Exactly. Yeah. No fear doesn't mean go do something crazy like walk on the edge of a cliff.
And you should have caution with people sometimes that you get a good feeling about. That's normal, but a lot of stuff is just conditioned fear. And I'll claim that one too. I work on that one as well. I want to mention that you and I both are also involved in a newer type of group called the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, and I practice that a lot. But its nickname is FREE, F-R-E-E, Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. And you and I are admins on the group, and I want to tell people about that because if they're digging what we're saying and they're all by themselves and they don't have anyone to talk to about their gray experience or whatever, this is a great group. It's on Facebook, and you type in a free, capital F-R-E-E, and the word experiencers, and the search box should take you there. And it's by experiencers, for experiencers. I met Ray Hernandez. He's like the spark that got all this going. And since we've been working together off and on things, I brought you in. And it's interesting how we're not even used to talking about this to each other. So things happen, people get angry or upset or annoyed, or maybe they have fear. I don't know. So when you get in there, expect it to be a little wild and woolly at times. But generally speaking, I think it's one of the coolest groups on Facebook I've ever been a part of.
Definitely.
Because it was just us, a handful, latter-day AR Bordon associates at first, and now there's literally a couple of thousand people, a lot of them lurking, but many sharing. And we have a lot of integrated experiencers, people who've been down this road a while, who've done research, sharing. And this is the wave of the future. There's the wave of the now and the wave of the future. Because now,
I definitely agree with you. I agree with you. I feel like more and more, after being a part of the group, I think the comfort level is starting to be apparent there. I think more and more as people talk about this, open up about this, the stigma that's attached to being an experiencer just vanishes. You start feeling really comfortable. You start feeling like, you know what, I can be who I am. I can tell my story, and I don't have to worry about someone coming along and calling me crazy for it.
Yes.
Because you see, this happens in all walks. I mean, if anybody would do any kind of research into the UFO community, you would see that there's a lot of very, very wonderful, upstanding citizens who have experiences like this all the time.
Yes.
And I think the really great people that you meet along the way changes your whole thought process too on it.
Oh, absolutely. The people who've been grappling with these things and had these experiences, who've like AR Bordon, who just stuck it out there and shared. I'm just so grateful for there are UFO contactee experiencer ancestors, and we'll just miss them when they're gone. We've lost a number of them along the way, and then we have new leaders coming up, and it's building. I think it's interesting. I think that this is the future. I think, as I've looked at it, is that our visitors, friends, contacts, families, star visitors, they are, maybe they went to our leaders and said, hey, this is this great technology, why don't you share it? And they didn't. So they're doing this peer-to-peer thing and contacting us. Our families are contacting us individually by the millions. And we just have to get over that fear to talk to each other. But, you know, when I open myself and say, oh, yeah, I'm an experiencer, I'm on the UFO, man, people tell me stories. I had someone recently say, you were the first person I ever said that to, whatever they were talking about, dreams, very vivid dreams they were having and things. So, Charlotte, my goodness, the time is like went zippity-doo-dah, like it always does when you and I talk. And I love you pick at your brain. You're so wise. You're just a wise lady, and I appreciate it. And thank you so much for sharing just intimate details. And you're an integrated experiencer, too. You've given us a lot of thought. And so it's great to talk to you, and we're going to conclude this Aquarian Radio special podcast. And you go up to aquarianradio.com. You'll find her bio, Charlotte's bio. You'll find this archive of the show that you're probably listening to right now. Many other, lots of integrated experiences come on to Aquarian Radio. Missing Janet terribly because I bet she would have loved to ask some cool questions to you. But we have this great people like Charlotte. Charlotte's going to be on panels with us, and we'll come on panels in the future.
Absolutely.
When we talk about We the Anunnaki or Linkage Institute, it's fun to get several of us together to bounce our ideas from. So thank you again, Charlotte, for sharing, and you have a good evening, and everyone else have evening for me, it could be morning. Good day. Everyone have a good day. You have a good day, and thank you so much.
You too. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have you heard? Metro by T-Mobile now includes Amazon Prime. Yes, enjoy the best of shopping and entertainment, movies, TV shows, music, free shipping, and much more. All included for just $40 per line for 3 lines. All on the T-Mobile network. Discover the smarter way. Metro by T-Mobile. That's genius. One offer per account. Offer subject to change. $12.99 per month value. Offer valid for new Amazon Prime members. Metro customers may notice reduced speeds versus some T-Mobile customers. Video at 480p. Capable device required. See store for details and terms and conditions.